The straight guy's the stud. He's a stud. Like, that's even considered like a compliment. Whereas
Woman's a slut.
there's an orgasm gap. He's getting $1 at work, you're getting 69 cents. He's getting 100 orgasms, you're getting 5.
I also used to view homosexuality, sex workers, and kink as something bizarre.
I want people to see me and say, oh my goddess, I didn't even know a woman could live like that. That she could be educated, that she could be liberated, that she could be a feminist, that she could be having as much sex as she wants.
Oscar Wilde once said that everything in the world is about sex, but only sex is about power. Hello, goddess.
Hello, Lee. It's such a pleasure to be here.
What brought you from Amsterdam all the way to Vienna?
It's a wonderful occasion for me. I've been invited to do a TEDx talk for Vienna Pride, and my talk is BDSM as a healing modality.
Why are you invited by this TEDx talk in Vienna regarding Pride?
Yes, so I'm known as an LGBTQ+ leader, and my topic for Pride is how is BDSM a healing modality? And so BDSM is part of the Kink over group, and which I practice all kinks, all fetishes, and there's a big overlap between folks who are LGBTQ+, folks who are neurospicy, and folks who are into BDSM and kink. And so that's my intersection. So why bring a dominatrix during Pride? I am part of the LGBTQ+ community, and my specialty is teaching, coaching, and throwing events around BDSM.
So what is BDSM? Please break it down.
Okay, so it's BDSM. So inside of the kink umbrella, so the kink being any sexuality that's not considered the norm. So that's the broad definition of kink. And so you have bondage, discipline, domination, submission, sadism, and masochism.
I see.
Okay? So these are like quick terms, and people are usually playing with BDSM around power and around pain. So emotional pain, physical pain. So bondage is a way to assert power. And, you bind someone, you're in charge, they are out of control. Domination, submission, I think it speaks for itself. Who's in power, who's giving away their power. Sadism means that someone is sexually turned on by giving pain, and masochism is sexually turned on by receiving pain. So you have the sadist and the masochist. They make a great team.
Happily that they both exist for each other.
A lot of people really get turned on by receiving pain. Also, there's biochemical reactions for that, which is, for example, adrenaline. So like when you injure yourself and then boom, you get a shot of adrenaline so that you can like deal with the injury. So it's the same thing with sadism and masochism. There's a shot of adrenaline and people are like, woo, that's fun, let's go.
BDDSSM is a part of the broader kink.
The broader kink description of anything sexual outside of the typical or outside of the norm.
I see.
Yes.
How do you distinguish fantasy, fetishes, and kink?
Fantasy, fetishes, and kink.
Yeah.
So kink is everything that is not considered traditional sex. Fetish is when you are sexually attracted to an object, like my shoes. And then fantasy is, what your mind is doing. Your mind is allowing desire. And I think that there's great room for that. And I think with fantasy, we should be mindful, though, that even our fantasies, I would like it to be healthy and consensual. I would like us to always, even when we're using our minds, to think through, you know what, is that fantasy really healthy? Because maybe if it's not, maybe I should dial that back a little bit. But I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with the imagination. I love imagination. I love fantasizing. I fantasize that we have an equal society. Fantasies are great, and we should be, I would also like us to be mindful that there are some, for me, there's some hard boundaries, consent, adulthood. These are some hard boundaries. And when our fantasies are leaning over those or pushing beyond consent and adulthood, we got to check in with ourselves because maybe that's not healthy.
As far as I know, that Kink culture is like a huge, also a part of the pride culture here.
Good. I love that. I think that kink should be part of every culture. And so it's because you have that overlap between people who are queer, they are also kinky. And our kink community has always fought for equality. So equality for all genders and all sexual orientations. So that's where you have that overlap of why do we have the same interests?
The Kink culture is also quite popular here in the German, Austrian region.
I find that as well. So Berlin, Vienna, and I'm living in Amsterdam. And I think that Amsterdam is the capital because my name is also Amsterdomme. I have an affinity for Amsterdam. But yeah, those three cities, Vienna, Berlin, Amsterdam, definitely like the center of kink culture and historically.
And why do you think it's that they become so culturally popular?
Well, I think it's my understanding that previous to World War II, that there was more embracing of LGBTQ plus culture. And so you had kind of an opening around sexuality happening in this area of the world. And so a lot of the early texts, a lot of the early shows and artwork were from here, from this area, and being celebrated. So let me also make a caveat that I grew up in a Western society. So I grew up in the United States. And so a lot of my cultural references are Western and not indigenous. And so I'm looking back in history and where in Western history were queer people celebrated. So like the show Cabaret is a queer show, right? Yeah. And so we can look at those references and we say, oh, well, those are our people. And so we've been here. LGBTQ plus people have been on the planet forever. And there are times when we get better representation. And there are times when we are facing more oppression, like today. But we've always been here. And so just to say that I think that the cultural aspect of queerness was on the rise, and then fascism oppressed it. And so we are back on the rise, and we're facing again fascism in the Western world.
Right now, as we speak.
Right now, 2025.
Very interesting how history repeats itself.
And that's why I'm happy to be here and to put myself forward. And since we're saying history, I'd also just like to take a moment and to be grateful to the people who paved the road that we are walking on today, because it's a privilege for me to sit here with you, Lee. People like Harvey Milk, he was murdered. He was the very first out gay elected leader in the United States, and he was martyred. And so I know my history and that we're facing a tough moment, but also to be joyous and privileged that we have the time together. And so I just want anyone who's listening to know that we honor our elders and the people who paved this road so that I could be free. Because I feel free. I feel free in Vienna. I'm walking around, there's rainbows everywhere, and there's sex stores, and sex work is legal, and my queerness is legal. And so I just want to be grateful
for this inclusiveness.
At this moment. And I'm part of the group of people who are visible and loud so that we can keep it.
On your TED Talk profile, you call yourself pleasure punk.
Yeah, I'm definitely a pleasure punk.
What does that mean to you?
So, first of all, I love to receive pleasure. I love to give pleasure. I think that pleasure and joy specifically are ways of being when we get to be our best selves. And it's also really difficult to oppress people when they're having a good time. So that's where the punk comes in. I still see myself as an outsider. I still see myself as seeking to punk the systems of oppression so that we can shake them up and change them. And so that's where the punk comes in. Like the punk movement is an outsider movement, is a DIY movement. And so I see myself as part of that.
I see. You've spoken about your past, how you used to be an anxious and people-pleasing individual.
I was socialized to be a femme. And I think a lot of femmes are taught to be pleasing. So our role is to make everyone comfortable and make sure that the man feels good. And that's, I think a lot of femmes are socialized that way. So, and I was too. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. What transformation allowed you to step into this work of kink and BDSM as a dominatrix and a kink coach?
Yeah, so right. So those two things are related because there was a version of me before I expressed my sexuality and my desires. And there was a version of me when I was younger that thought I'm supposed to be a certain set of ways in order to get by in society. Yeah. And so I was taught be pleasing, be quiet. I was allowed to use my intellect, but not my sexuality. It was very rigid construct. And yet at the same time, I was always sexualized by men. So even before I was old enough to choose for myself, men would treat me as if I was a sex object. So growing up, it was incredibly confusing. Don't be a sex object was what the women would say, but then the men would treat me as if I was. And growing up and realizing my sexuality was hard and confusing and sometimes even violent. And yet I kept going as if it wasn't. I kept going as if, well, if they say, fake it till you make it. And I was still buying into, well, if I could get married and my husband would kind of save me from this world of ick. He did not. He was also not saved from the world of ick. So I had to come back out after my divorce. I came back out again as queer, as bisexual. And in that time of dating, I started to meet people, and one of them opened me up to the concept. He said, well, to be with me, you got to be kinky if we're going to date. And he said, but I think that you probably are a dominatrix. And I was like, really? How do you see that? Should I bust out the whip? And indeed, in this really wonderful relationship, we took classes together and workshops together because you can take classes. Like, please do not attempt to give a lot of pain until you've taken classes on how to give pain without injuring someone. It's two different things, right? And we would take workshops, how to negotiate, how to communicate, what are desires, what are boundaries. And in that relationship, we also were exposed to polyamory and a larger polyamorous community that we were both a part of, that we both became part of. So we were kinky and queer and polyamorous. And I ended up being part of this larger community for about 6 years before I moved to Europe. And we started teaching each other these classes. So we would have literally bring together the whole community, have some sandwiches, and talk about how do we negotiate sex? How do we negotiate play? How do we negotiate STIs, which are sexually transmitted diseases, so that we're keeping each other safe? How do we negotiate rules around relationships? All of these things we would teach each other. and also have big, huge events. There are huge BDSM events. And here in Europe is Folsom in Berlin, which is one of the largest BDSM events in the world. It's public, it's free. You can walk around in the streets of Berlin and get an experience that is a flavor of the lifestyle that I lead. So I went to those events in the US, and I decided through research, I'm like, okay, this is my lifestyle. This is what I'm doing. Call me goddess. And I've been living the goddess lifestyle since 2011. And then I am an expert, I'm a leader, and I'm hosting events, I'm hosting workshops. And then a friend suggested, you can make money at this. And that's when it really started to shift for me. Ooh, the money. Money is energy. Yeah. Money is power. Yeah. And what happened when people started to pay me for the scenes, something really shifted in me where I started to become even more confident. And then I decided, I got it in my mind, I was like, well, how far can I take this? So I've taken it all the way to a book. I got a book deal. My book's on Amazon. You can get it on my website. I have coaching customers. I have individuals. I've worked with couples. I've run events. And let's just keep going. And then I was invited for the TED Talk, which to me is a huge life achievement.
When you turn this subject into a profession, that opens doors to many people coming to understand what it is about, and to debunk it, the myths around it, because there are a lot of myths and assumptions, prejudices around this subject and culture.
Yeah, I think that we treat BDSM as taboo, as something that should be locked in a dungeon. And I love the dungeon. And to me, we are further suppressing our shadows and our shame when we do that. And so, by professionalizing, by saying, no, you're going to pay me for this. And I also say to people, don't tell me how I should make money. I'm a woman. Don't ever tell me how I should make money. Which is a very forceful way to move this into a dialogue, which I'm a forceful person. So I'm a dominatrix. But I love what you're saying because it creates a business structure for us to have that conversation, to have the negotiation. And I would like to see more of that. I would love to see the decriminalization of all sex workers. I think that for me, that's the number one issue, is that in many places in the world, what I'm doing is considered criminal. I do not think that an adult asking to get spanked should be a criminal activity. I think that is a fun, pleasurable, enjoyable, and if they want to pay for it, I think it's even better. And the marginalization of people who are doing this is completely unfair, and it creates a lot of insecurity, and it creates a lot of oppression. So I would love to flip that script, which is why I'm doing this, which is BDSM is healing, y'all. Like, have a good time, get your pleasure, get your joy. And the healing aspect, not only is it the money, which is incredibly healing, to have the resources I need to take care of myself, but it's healing because you can get into flow state, which is the number one place that you want to be in positive psychology. So positive psychology has defined flow state as this aspect of when your consciousness is completely in the zone. A lot of people get into flow state through running. They'll get that runner's high. So BDSM can also bring you into flow state. Flow state is also when you do something you like, you do it well, and you repeat it. Yeah. Okay? This is the best brain medicine in the world, is flow state. BDSM gets you in flow state. And it doesn't happen for everyone all the time, but it happens for a lot of us a lot of the time. And then we're happier, more joyous, more productive. We make better society.
How did that journey of your own self-discovery and the journey that followed after into BDSM and kink reshape your sense of confidence and self-worth?
Yeah, this is the big one. This is like, if everything in this talk could come right here, because I would love other women, and of course all genders, but I'm a woman and I really want to help other women. So I've done a lot of work. I've done Buddhism, I've done talk psychology, I've done complex trauma therapy. So I'm not saying that BDSM is the only modality. I'm saying that use all the modalities and use BDSM. Because it's linked to my sexuality, which I think is so important to our self-worth. Prior to reclaiming my sexuality, I survived sexual violence as a young person. So that over-sexualization, sexual harassment, and sexual violence occurred when I was a young person and really kind of like robbed me from ever really knowing my own sexuality. My sexuality was only in response to men. And so finding that I wanted to have my own sexuality in my own way, and that being queer and being kinky has let me explore all these different types of sexuality. Like everything you want to explore, I've explored it. and you could even see I'm like laughing and smiling. And I think that owning my own sexuality, having gone through all these different types of BDSM, to really find it, to really enjoy pleasure, to really enjoy orgasms, to really enjoy the connection. That's the other thing too. Like I'm talking about myself, but I'm connected to everyone I play with. All of my partners are meaningful to me. I love them and they love me. And so what it did was when I got my own sexuality and I got my own confidence and I transformed into a dominatrix, to a femdom, to a goddess, men beg me to be with me. Literally beg me. Literally will pay to be around me. Literally will pay for me to touch them. That's a complete inverse of what I grew up with, where they took from me, right? And now they're on their knees begging, can I please be with you? Will you please let me touch your feet? Will you please let me buy you shoes? Will you please, 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 begging. Can I take you to restaurants? Can I take you to shows? Can I take you to hotels? Can I show you off? Can I learn from you, goddess? Can you help me, goddess? And that confidence that I have as being a dominatrix, I take it into everywhere in my business. I'm a marketer, I'm a speaker, I'm a writer. And when somebody's coming at me without that adoration energy, that's not for me. Okay? Women of the world, if it's what you want, if you want a different energy, but if you want to be adored, being a dominatrix is a great way to be adored.
So somehow it feels to me that this journey, this transformation that you went through, is almost like reversing a predefined role of sexuality for women, but then it also helped for men to revert their predefined roles in sexuality as well.
Thank you, Lee. You're absolutely nailing it. And I'm usually talking about women, but yeah, there's the man on the other side of this who has also been conditioned to be the aggressor, the hunter, the dominant. Maybe he doesn't want to be that. And this play and this dynamic with me allows him to explore other sides of himself. Right, exactly. We're socially conditioned into these frames and maybe we don't want them.
It somehow makes me view BDSM as a safe space where people can openly express their sexuality, which may not fit into the predefined social norms.
And I would go even further. So yeah, you talked about sexuality. I would say then gender, because again, so many of us are socialized to be feminine or masculine, man or woman. And depending on whatever your belief systems are, there's a spectrum. Right. And perhaps the man wants to play a different gender. So with me, he gets to play a different gender. I play the role of daddy many times, many times. I'm daddy, and he's my princess.
I see.
So he gets to express not only his sexuality is different and his power dynamic is different, but maybe he wants to try on
Different gender.
a different gender. And I am for it. I love all genders and I'm here for it. Yeah.
That's really liberating.
There you are. There was the word. I talked on about it for like 10 minutes. I'm liberated.
When we stop looking at the sex and the sexuality, all this predefined roles and norms, and stop viewing it as some weird taboo, then it suddenly becomes just like, a science of human activities, right? Because from the beginning of history that we reproduce through sex, and naturally we cannot be all the same in the ways how we conduct these sexual activities. And people should be allowed to express their differences and not just trying so hard to repress their indifferences.
I think when you repress, you become anxious, depressed, stressed out. And again, that's that intersection with the queer community, because we as queers are also told that we're not supposed to express our homosexuality, right? And so you have that intersection with kinks and queers, because we see what that oppression does to us. It makes us sad, depressed, anxious, stressed out, and also unhealthy. I mean, a society that allows us to express is a healthier society.
Yes.
And in our society that tells LGBTQ people that you're not supposed to be LGBTQ, in a society that says that kink is taboo and ugly and should be in a dungeon, that's really, it makes it very difficult to be authentically true and then attract the life that you deserve. And again, a tool of oppression.
It also takes away the opportunities for people to get to know themselves in their most intimate and natural instinct.
I totally agree. I think that sex is natural. I think that kinks are natural, fetishes. I think that power play is natural. We were humans, like we have this body, we want to play with it. And that through accessing these different ways of being, we can be more truly authentically ourselves, and that will shift everything.
You spot on a very important aspect is about the healthy mindset and the healthy practice of sex. But the interesting thing is that somehow we have a very, I would say, controversial definition of what is a healthy sex, as if that there is a template that people should play if this is what you consider as socially healthy. But whether it is psychologically healthy, it's an entirely different area and topic, and it is very little discussed. And I think that is probably one of the main reasons why the whole BDSM and kink culture seems like such a taboo in many cultures and many places.
Yeah, well, I think it's oppression. I think, having been someone who's gone through a few decades here of expression and self-expression, and also I'm a political activist, I believe that the reason why in Western culture we're told that sexuality is male, female, intercourse, towards procreation only is a tool of oppression. Because once we start stepping out of that and we're experiencing our sexuality just for pleasure and joy, it's really a lot harder to oppress us, right? And so you have that oppression of gay people and queer people on purpose, because we're liberated, because we're having fun just for the sake of having fun. And you're not supposed to do that in this society. You're supposed to be a good worker bee. And so this is where I see the intersection of politics and queerness and anti-fascism. and kink, because let's step up and say, this is a better society, a society that is liberated sexually will also be liberated from fascism.
In the sense of resistance, that is how it becomes political all of a sudden.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can look to the 60s and to the flower children and, flower power and love is free and free love. Those are my, forefathers were in the 60s. And that's my movement. Maybe it looks a little more technical and has a little bit more leather and a little bit more latex. But I still think I'm a hippie.
You describe BDSM as a portal to altered states of this flow states of consciousness on par with meditation and breath work. What makes BDSM healing for body and mind?
Yes. Oh, we could do 90 minutes just on this. I love this topic because for me also, I love this topic because I feel like no one told me. It was intimated or inferred and kind of like around the idea of like more pleasure. So more pleasure, more orgasms, you're happier. What I have come to learn is that there is a cocktail of serotonin and endorphins and the love hormone. And when these are all pulled together in these pleasure states that we're doing in play and BDSM, that's when we hit that flow state. And it's called subspace. I don't know if you've heard that term, subspace. Okay. So when the submissive is usually the one receiving pain. So they're also usually the masochist, not always. And they're usually the one who's giving up control. And they usually have like a type of adoration for the dominant. So all of that combined gives them a feeling of euphoria. It's like drugs without the drugs. I'm talking about sober play here. So that the endorphins that come from liking your dominant, from feeling pain, that's going to be that adrenaline, creates this wonderful energetic cocktail. And I believe that when we allow ourselves these flow states and when we are feeling our best, we can then concentrate on the best version of ourselves. So people talk about in consciousness and in meditation, bringing in your higher self. Well, I'm finding my higher self in BDSM because when I'm in that flow state, I say to myself, I am a goddess, I am amazing, I am all powerful, I am rich, I am gorgeous, I am, the most powerful woman ever. Hey, that's really good for me. In the same way that meditating, and I've been meditating for over 20 years, when I'm in the meditative space and I can empty my mind, I then bring in, I love all people. I want to be generous. I want to be compassionate. I do contemplative meditation. It's one and the same for me. The contemplative meditation got me so far, and the BDSM has gotten me another level up. And I think when we combine thoughtfulness, meditation, breath work, of course, traditional therapy, love it. All of medicine healing, a lot of people love that too. I think that these are all wonderful aspects of bringing us to be better people, to just enjoy our humanity more. We're here for a short time, let's enjoy it. And when we are enjoying it, I think we're more peaceful. Yeah. So isn't it interesting? BDSM looks violent. It looks like a dungeon and whips and chains and I love all that stuff, right? I love high heels and leather, let's be real. And I ride motorcycles and like the whole thing. I love all of it. And yet it is the opposite. It looks like violent and leather and chains, and it is peace and love and harmony and bliss. Wow. Yeah, and then there's aftercare, which is the time that you take after you do a scene. Everyone does this. So we do a scene that looks maybe pretty violent where I'm spanking someone. And then after the scene, I cuddle them. I bring them water. I bring them tea. I bring them something to eat. I bring them chocolate. I bring them a joint, whatever they want. and we cuddle and we connect and we come back to center together. And that makes us better people together.
That's very empowering. Because the person really felt like that they are safe to express who they are and get cared for nonetheless, regardless their differences.
How about let's go a step further and they get cared for because they're different. You're different, you want something a little outside the box? Well, I'm gonna help you express it. You're gonna feel safe doing it. You're probably gonna get pretty turned on. You probably were attracted to me for some reason, which is exciting and fun for you. And then at the end, I'm gonna cuddle you and tell you that you're wonderful and send you on your way.
Not to be afraid to be who they are. Most importantly,
I mean, I love that. And for me, the aspect, especially around queerness, is so important to me because I think so many of us are getting these awful messages from a very early age, and especially today in 2025, around being trans or non-binary or queer. And so if I can be a counterbalance to that, yes, please. Thank you.
I think a lot of like these kind of repression also comes from this kind of like social culture where sex itself is taboo. We're not really talking about it, even though we are 2025. I grew up in an age where sex is not talked about. Sex was not educated, and I think all these attempt of making sex so mysterious somewhat give us this feeling of shame to talk about it, not mentioning to even express it.
Yeah, we're not talking to our friends. We're not talking to our family. We might not even be talking to our partner. Yeah. Right? Exactly. So many people. And yet, you and I were kind of talking in a positive way, but there's a whole other world that's happening, which is pornography. And which is not sex education, which is a type of entertainment, which is twisted. Hey, I love porn. I'm not saying that porn in itself is wrong. I'm saying when porn is the educator, it's wrong. And when we're being taught that type of sex and we're not being taught making love, okay? Like, let's talk about making love. And so we're not even being taught making love. And I don't even think we are being taught how to procreate. It's like none of it. And then we get into those, or other folks have gotten into these relationships where they're not having fulfillment. And that's rough. That's really rough. For human, I still think that we have a body to have pleasure in this body. Like, I love eating chocolate. I love sex too. That's pleasure.
Sadly, because we are not discussing sex enough as an education, people had to seek out to pornography in order to educate themselves, where they might get very twisted ideas about sex. And it creates a lot of it makes it even more difficult for them to feel okay to learn about their own sexuality.
I would totally agree with that assessment. I think that pornography as sex ed can direct people down a very difficult, ugly, and harsh path because most of what's popular porn is violent. And if a young person thinks that sex is violent, we are in trouble. So some people are acting out the violence. As you said, some people are also suppressing themselves because they don't want violence.
Nowadays, because the pornography becomes more and more hardcore, we feel that we need to bring in this kind of a very visually stimulating style of pornography. And somehow it is impacting, influencing, and twisting the way how people have sex because they cannot really learn systematically from pornography what sex is about and how they are supposed to feel safe and free to express sexuality as a part of love expression.
Exactly. And again, though, I see it as this tool of oppression. I don't think that we can take this conversation about porn and not also talk about a society that is saying that sex is only male, female, is only towards procreation. It's all together because we're being violently oppressed when porn is also the way we're learning sexuality. It's also a tool of oppression because the women are learning, and of course I'm stereotyping, but the women are learning you have to have a plastic body, right? You've got to have, and again, no kink shame or no shame if you want fake boobs, if you want fake lips, if you want to shave your body, good, that's on you. I'm fine with it. But that's not what a body usually looks like or sounds like or acts like. When they do these actions in porn, to me, that's not what sex looks like. Sex is messy, it's funny, it's awkward, there's fluids, there's all types of stuff, and you never see any of that in porn. And again, what the message it's giving women is you're supposed to look a certain way, you're supposed to enjoy it, and then the message it's giving to the man, again, same thing. His body, his penis has to be a certain size to be pleasurable. Oh, what a trip that is on men. Because I see a lot of men and they want to talk about the size of their body parts. I feel for them too. It's such a trip, a head trip for them. It's also racist. Yeah. I mean, it goes on and on and on, and it's so many levels of oppression. Again, I'm a porn consumer. I'm not telling anyone to stop watching porn. I am saying when it's sex ed, it is oppressive. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it is leading. I saw a study in the New York Times. Young people are choking each other because they're seeing it in porn, yeah, and they are damaging each other's brains. And let me tell you, BDSM experts, we don't do that. Yeah. So we might be getting the tag that we're the dangerous ones, but we are the exact opposite. If you want to learn safe, come to an expert, hire an expert, come to one of my classes, because I will never injure you. I will do my darndest to make sure that the pain never injures you. Mm-hmm. That is really in trouble. And I think that for me, it is injury to force someone to shave. Maybe their skin doesn't want them to shave, or to have these fake body parts. Maybe they don't want those fake body parts. Yeah. Maybe they don't want to be a certain thinness or fatness. Let people be people.
A false standard, beauty standard that is somehow strangely and commonly accepted, and people think that we have to meet to this standard. They might even think that they want to do it, but the reason why they want to do it is because they are convinced only that is beauty.
Precisely. And I have this conversation constantly with people because, for example, and this is a funny one, whenever a guy is having a domination submission date with me, 9 out of 10 times he'll say, "Do you want me to shave?" And I'm like, I will never tell you to shave. To me, and again, no kink shame if that's your kink, but to me, that's telling someone to manipulate their body. I haven't even met you yet, and I'm gonna tell you to manipulate your body? No, that's not for me. But he'll say to me, "Oh, that's what I thought you wanted," or "That's what I thought made me more attractive." Mm-hmm. I'm like, wow, I don't have a preference. All bodies are beautiful. Hair is beautiful. I love your body. Bring the hair. Or don't, I don't care. But don't make it, I don't want you to have to manipulate yourself to be with me.
Mm-hmm. So in this culture, there's a lot about power. It's centered around power. That corresponds to what Oscar Wilde once said, that everything in the world is about sex, but only sex is about power.
Love Oscar Wilde.
How do you personally define power in the context of BDSM, and how is it different from what people assume?
Yeah, let's start with what people assume. And this is a tough one for me because I think people assume that a dominatrix is a man-eater or a succubus. A succubus is a Jungian idea of how we see a slutty woman or a dominating woman, a boss babe. She's a man-eater. And it's very difficult for me because I like to think that I'm quite kind. I like kind. I think kind is the kinkiest thing about me. And it's wonderful. And so I don't love that that dominatrixes are portrayed as twisted or man haters or man eaters. I love men. I love everyone. So that was the second part of the question is how are we portrayed in society? And then what is power for me? So power for me is that I have the ability to live my life freely. That as a woman, that I can demand respect, that I can demand and command safety, and that I can demand and command the sex that I want, the money that I want, the power that I want, and the ability to move people in the direction that I want to move them. And when I'm saying moving in the direction, which is joy and pleasure and health. I want to see a happier, healthier, and freer society. And so that's my power, is that I'm utilizing these tools to move us into bliss so that we can overcome this moment of fascism.
You wrote this in your article that you dream of a world where we embrace our shadow desires without shame. What kinds of desires are most often repressed in our culture and why?
Yeah, this is a great question. So the shadow self that I'm talking about is where we've had an experience and it creates an ick feeling in us, and we kind of put it behind us and say, well, I'm not supposed to really love 400 euro shoes. So I put it in my shadow. Shoes is a big one. Shoes and feet are huge fetishes. People want to buy me shoes and have me walk around in them. People want me to walk on them. People want to kiss my shoes. People want to lick my shoes. It is a whole thing. It really could be anything. I do think that people do feel ashamed that they want some type of pain, even though pain and pleasure are very closely aligned. And so I would say, if you want pain, get it safely. People want to surrender, and I love that for them. So they consider that they're submissive, but they want to be tied up. They want to be blindfolded. They want their ears covered. They want to take away some senses so that they can feel more free. Do that safely. Let's take that out of the shadow, because that's just a natural desire to want to let go, to want to be free. I want to be worshipped. And I don't think that I actually am a goddess. I do know that I'm a human woman. Because it does sound very religious, and I want to be clear that I'm not. But for me, that aspect of being put up in a pedestal of just anything that can make my life more comfortable. And for some reason, I was told as a young person that I wasn't supposed to ask for that I was supposed to always be independent and and stand on my own and take care of myself and then take care of others. No. Now it's reversed. Take care of me. Literally, get me my breakfast, pack my bags, make sure I'm hydrated, check. Take care of me, put me on the pedestal, make sure that I feel well in the world. Mm-hmm. And then when I don't, put me to bed and give me my water and give me my Tylenol and let me go.
That's so interesting. It would really take some people a minute to kind of like think that, what we used to believe that is like a dependency and which put people in a vulnerable situation, somehow, it's not psychologically entirely true when it's in a two-person dynamics in a relationship.
Right. If anything, the one who's taking care of me is dependent on me. We just totally flip the roles.
What we usually think is that the person who's being taken care of is the dependent.
Yeah, no.
You see?
Right, but I'm doing it from a space where I command and demand. And let's also be real, like I'm giving something. Yeah. And what I'm giving him is that I'm doing it safely. We're doing it with negotiation. There could be weeks and months of negotiation before any of this happens. Doing it with contracts. I'm doing it as safe as and ethical as possible. So that's what he's getting with me. And then he knows that when he's investing in me, either putting himself in a cage or giving me money or cleaning my house, that he's investing in someone who deserves it. Because I am showing him that I deserve it.
Right.
By showing him this is who I am. Yeah. I'm a leader. Yeah. I'm a feminist. I am out here seeking to create evolution.
Yeah. And safe space. I think this is what matters probably to them the most, is that they feel that this is a safe space for them to be who they are and who they really are rather than who they are expected to be.
And wouldn't it be fantastic if all of our relationships were like that? So instead of making assumptions about what sex is or making assumptions about what marriage is, or what a girlfriend is or a boyfriend is, isn't it wonderful to do all that negotiation, communication, and create safe space for each other? Oh la la. That's why having dominatrixes come out and do podcasts and TED Talks and books and television shows is really important, because we can bring to the rest of the society, look, we're negotiating all of this and then creating safe space. And I think that relationships are wonderful places to evolve. Yeah.
So in practice, what is the difference between indulging a fantasy and consciously integrating it? And how can kink turn suppressed longings into tools for growth and transformation?
I think that first part's a really tough one, because I do think that indulging in fantasies in general is great. Like, you've got a fantasy to be tied up, find the safe person, do it. I think then there's the next step, which is, well, where did this fantasy come from? Where is my desire to receive pain or to be a dominant coming from? And that's where we can start integrating it into our consciousness. It's when we're not being aware and when we're just rolling with it, that it's just for fun, and that's great too, go for it. But when we start saying, well, why is it that I want to be on top? And for me, it's because I was on the other side of it for so long, where there was so much unconsensual attention and touching coming at me. Now I want it exactly the opposite. And so I know where that came from. So I can transform myself into being more conscious and aware of what I'm doing, because I know where it comes from.
How can kink turn suppressed longings into tools for growth and transformation?
Yeah, I'm using myself as the example. So the longing was to have consensual sexual attention, to be objectified in a consensual way. I would like to talk about objectification, because it's huge in the kink world. It's huge in sexuality. So objectification is when someone is treated as a sexual object. For me, I was treated as a sexual object from a very early age. And again, I think that that's common for a lot of women. Every woman I know in the United States was objectified as a sexual being from a too early age. I'm talking like, for me, it started at like 10 years old, and that's way too old to be, too young to be a sexual object. 13, 14, 15, 16. So before I even knew what sex was, I was an object. That's inappropriate, that's abuse, full stop. Now I'm an adult and maybe I want to be an object. Maybe my fantasy is actually, so the shadow was, no, you're not supposed to be an object because it hurt when I was young. But now that I'm an adult, I'm like, yeah, I want to be an object. I dress in the leather, I dress in the latex, I dress in these beautiful outfits, I do the hair, the makeup, the nails. And people see me as a sexual object when I allow it, and then it's an agreement made. And then that shifts me into a power position in my own life. So from going from shadow and shame and low self-worth, I'm still the same person. I still look the same. And now I'm standing in, well, I am attractive. I am sexy. I'm allowed to enjoy what I look like and feel like and the power that I can take in a room. I walk into a room of men and I stand right in that middle of the room and I know that they desire me and I can use that power and use that idea of my sexuality and how they might objectify me to my benefit. Earlier in life, I would be afraid to walk into the room of men. And now I'm like, haha, I know you want to kiss my feet. I know it. And it doesn't even matter if no one in the room wants to kiss my feet. What matters is that I feel strong enough to determine how I'm going to be treated.
It's like a complete flip of your psyche, that, you know, how you view yourself or how you position yourself in this kind of dynamics. Let's just say that in both cases, you might be seen as an object, but one is that it was imposed on you.
Yes.
And the later case was that you deliberately choose and give permission to be seen as an object. So maybe on the surface, they all look the same, but in the deep down psychology, it's completely the opposite from one to another.
Thank you for saying that. And then when we're talking about psychology and we're talking about consciousness, we're talking about our energy. And so from going from a oppressed and fearful and in pain and anxious energy to I like my life. I love myself. I enjoy myself. I love who I am. I love the way I look and the body I'm in and the brain that I have. Whoa. So again, same body, same Amsterdam, but now my consciousness has shifted, which means that I'm going to attract better into my life.
Right.
And that's where we go into the consciousness healing of BDSM.
Right.
Yeah, it's just like another tool. Like same could be said for a lot of people who meditate, that they'll go from that fear and then through the power of meditation, change their mind through compassion to be more generous.
In your essay, you wrote that BDSM is BDSM a healing modality. You argue that insight alone cannot release trauma, that the body must be involved. What kinds of emotional or energetic blocks have you seen released through kink?
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing this up. So I love traditional therapy. So I'm not saying this is in replacement. What I'm talking about is BDSM a healing modality, is taking a somatic approach that the body keeps the score, and in my experience, orgasms are happening in the body, that it's a physical aspect. And so if we're just looking at unlocking orgasms as a somatic approach to feeling better, that's got to be done in the body, and it's got to be done in person, and it's got to be done with touch and emotions and safety. And so I've worked with folks who didn't even know that they could have orgasms. So they come to me with the concept that they want to be controlled or told what to do, and they want a dominatrix, to tell them what to do. They're attracted to me, they think it's hot. Great, love that for us. And then I can use, again, we negotiate. What do you want in this session? What is this going to look like? Do you want to try to orgasm? Is that a goal here? Okay, great. So I direct them to get more and more comfortable, feel more and more safe. I can read their body. What's fun here? Are they getting excited? Are they getting flushed? Are they heavily breathing? There's lots of body clues. And then we can move towards that could be self-release. And a lot of times it's just stuck. It's just, I don't feel good about myself. I feel ashamed that I want pain. I'm also working with people who are transitioning. People who have come to me are transgender and they need a safe space to be in a new body. Okay, so someone's transitioning and now they're taking hormones and maybe they're also taking other meds and it's making it just really difficult to feel good in their body in this moment. Hey, I'm here for you. I love your body. I love all the things. Let's get in touch. So a lot of times let's also be real. A lot of times people are survivors of sexual violence and they're confused about how their body acted during the sexual violence. And they're confused and ashamed that they survived it. Our society does not help people who are surviving sexual violence. Let's just be real. And so we're turning it on ourselves. We're feeling bad about ourselves. And so maybe they're attracted to the idea that I might hurt them too, which might not sound like a healthy idea. But when it's done with safety, it can be incredibly transformative because then they can feel pain and pleasure and love at the same time. And then I can help pass them through that experience and then they're liberated. I say, oh, well, yeah, I did enjoy the pain with the pleasure and that's okay. And it was okay before, which is like mind-blowing. I don't think we talk enough about the fact that, from my understanding, a female body will protect itself during an unconsensual, violent sex experience by releasing lubricant. A lot of women feel incredible shame that their body released lubricant, but that's just what the body does. Yeah. And let's talk to those women and say, it's okay that that happened. That was just your body being healthy. Don't feel shame and guilt about that. And if you want to have the experience of a bit of pain while you're having sex, that's okay.
Yeah, because we are wired through our experiences very, very young age, and because of that, because our experience varies, and so our bodies are wired and programmed differently, and therefore we are attracted to the certain patterns.
And it's just what we know. And then I talked about the female body. The male body also can have the experience of a sexual attraction unconsciously, and then the penis engorges. And then the guy feels shame. So this was someone who came to me who saw a Disney movie when he was young and got excited by a snake that hypnotizes the main character in the Disney movie. And he saw this at a young age. He had a sexual response, but then his next response was shame. But he'd been carrying with him into adulthood this desire to be hypnotized. But because he felt a crippling type of shame, he never asked anyone to do it until he met me. And I was like, hypnosis? That sounds great. That sounds super fun and super safe for me to meet a strange man who wants me to control him with the sound of my voice. Feels pretty darn safe to me. So I'm like, yeah, let's go. So we met, we wrote a contract, we discussed what he was excited about, why this was the thing for him. I learned how to hypnotize. I hypnotized him. I told him I was a snake and he was gonna do what I wanted him to do. And he achieved the experience that he wanted to achieve. And over months of being together, at the end, he was getting brighter and happier and more fulfilled and more sexy and more confident. And I was like, look, friend, this sensual hypnosis thing is actually not that kinky on the whole spectrum. And like, maybe you should just ask a woman that you are attracted to learn hypnosis and be free. But decades of his life, he was in shadow and in shame because he got excited watching a Disney movie. How many of us are walking around feeling all this shame? And we need someone to come along and say, hey, that's super cool. Sensual hypnosis. I'll be a snake. Let's go.
We are somehow turned on by different things, and there's just no explanation to it.
Right. There's no explanation, and yet we turn it into shame. Or, yeah, okay, some of the earlier experiences that I endured were violent. So that's what I know. And we talk about this in dating, like you date your father. Like we'll talk about it in dating, but we won't talk about it in sex. So we invariably attract what we know from our primary parental relationships. Well, why aren't we talking about that in sex?
How do you ensure that BDSM stays safe?
Yes.
Especially when people are working through intense emotions or trauma?
Yes.
And what does emotional aftercare look like for you as a practitioner?
Yes. Okay, so this is a big, huge one. And if anyone who's listening and watching has gone through a lot of trauma and violence, first, get help. And then where you're helped a little bit along and you have some self-awareness, that's where someone like me can come in. And you gotta be as honest as you can be with me and with yourself, right? So where did this desire come from? What happened to me? Where do I absolutely not want to be touched? So for me, I had an experience as a young person, somebody grabbing my hair and trying to force something. Don't ever grab my hair. So I'll say that in a session, don't ever grab my hair. Somebody can say to me, don't ever grab my hair. So we go through, I have a whole questionnaire. Where do you like to be touched? Where do you don't like to be touched? Have you been injured? Because we're not going to touch a place where you had an injury before. Have you had a surgery? Have you had a disease I should be aware of? So we'll go through a whole checklist of what's your safe word. Mm-hmm. Okay, when you call this word, that's going to be a full stop. Yeah. We will fully stop play. We will get you aftercare. We will take care of you. So because I've been doing this since 2011, I have a full checklist. I go and I take classes. I work with other leaders who have taught me how to hold space. Now, me personally, when I'm going into a scene, my primary focus is the safety of my submissive. So I am completely in energetic attachment with that person. And it allows me to be that safe person for, 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours. And I see it as my role and my job. So I'm going to click into it. So I'm going to prepare for my role mentally, emotionally, physically. I'm going to click in. I'm going to be specifically there for the submissive. If something happens that creates anxiety or anxiousness with me, I'm going to check in with myself. Is this an end? Is this a yellow flag? Is this a red flag? I will stop a scene if I feel that I'm going to be put into a bad place. But 99% of the time, I have not stopped a scene. I've kept it going to full completion. Then I give aftercare to the submissive. And if it's been, so what's wonderful about this zone space for me is that I get to act out my desire of being a caretaker and my desire of being the powerful one. And I get to act out my desire of being in that zone of domination. So it's a gift for me as well. So that's how I see it. I see it as my role. I see it as my gig. I see it as my space. If I need aftercare for myself afterwards, I will have someone else that I can call, okay? So if it's not going to be the submissive in that scene, if they're going to move on, I have someone else I can call. So I'm getting taken care of on the other side. The vast majority of the time, I don't need aftercare. The vast majority of the time, I'm like, that was so fun. Thank you. I got to do something really amazing. I got to help someone. But yeah, I think that the dominant also needs to have care for themselves. And when it's my partnership, when it's the person I'm in relationship with, he knows that he's going to bring, or she or they know that they're going to bring me aftercare. And usually that's taking me to the spa.
From what I hear from you, it really feels to me that it's like a kind of therapy, starting with giving this kind of checklist about their history. And it's almost like the first step where you ask them to be open and honest about themselves with you.
And at the same time, I can talk about it as a healing modality, and the people who are coming to me don't necessarily see it that way. They see they need safe space. They know that they have a shadow or a desire or a fantasy, and or they're coming to me because they think I'm hot, which is also totally great and wonderful too. Yeah. So we've kind of gone to like the extreme of when someone has a trauma that they want to work through. I don't want to call that extreme. There's a spectrum. There's like, I just want to have a good time. Yeah. I want to have a good time with pain. I don't know why. And then there's, I want to have a good time with pain and I do know why.
People have different needs. They have different levels of awareness about their needs as well.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. And I'm very happy to attract the people who want to just have a great fun session and then say bye.